Before we tackle the issue of coral bleaching, we may want to ask the question, what even are coral? As it turns out, they're actually animals in the phylum Cnidaria. Corals are made up of many small polyps that work together to capture small organisms to feed the coral, and contain reproductive tissue to help the coral grow and multiply. The coral polyps take carbon from algae and seawater and turn it into calcium carbonate with calcium from the ocean. The many polyps push away from the surface they start on and fill the gaps with the calcium carbonate skeleton in order to create this whole branching structure. Coral that live in shallow, warm waters also have zooxanthellae living in their polyps. The single-celled algae photosynthesizes to produce food for itself. It then shares some of this food with the coral host, and in return, the coral gives the algae nutrients to survive. Zooxanthellae also give colors like brown, green, and red to many corals. Reefs are also worth an estimated $30 to $172 billion for humans in providing food, protection of shorelines, jobs based in tourism, and even medicines. Overfishing and destructive fishing, pollution, warming, changing ocean chemistry, and invasive species all pose great threats to coral reefs. What is coral bleaching, and why is it so destructive to our ecosystems? When conditions in the oceans change, specifically things like temperature, lights, or nutrients, stress is placed on the coral, and they expel the algae in their tissues, which turns them completely white. Corals can survive this bleaching, but it puts them under extreme pressure and often leads to death. White, bleached coral isn't necessarily dead, but it is either dying or very prone to disease and other things that could kill it. Now let's imagine the aftermath of coral bleaching. Picture a barren reef of white coral skeletons and a declining sign of any other life. Slowly, turf algae will take over previously healthy coral and cover them in a thick film. This film can destroy the reef ecosystem, and without healthy coral, fish and many other organisms that rely on coral for shelter, food, or the balance of their habitat ecosystem will move away or even die. But what can we do? Well, to start, on a larger scale, we could make big corporations and companies responsible for their carbon emissions and start limiting the amount that cities and companies can expend. This also means switching to renewable resources such as solar energy, wind energy, and even hydroenergy. Mining and burning coal may be cheap as a source of fuel, but carbon pollution warms the oceans at extreme rates and therefore causes corals to bleach and ecosystems to die. This means we need to start using renewable and environmentally safe forms of energy if we want to save our planet. There are also things you can do to help with coral bleaching, even on a super small scale. For example, eating less beef can really help. Beef requires 28 times more land to produce than pork or chicken, and 11 times more water. It also results in 5 times more climate warming emissions. Other things like limiting the amount of water or trash you use can also benefit coral in the long run, whether keeping trash out of the oceans or keeping them out of landfills. I want to share some innovative solutions that people have come up with to help protect coral reefs. All over the world, there are things called coral nurseries, where small polyps or small coral colonies are protected and raised in small, shallow areas, tended to by divers and scientists. In addition, other scientists and conservationists are creating things called artificial reefs, where human-made objects, sometimes like old sunken ships or cement and stone creations, are dropped or sunk to the bottom of the ocean, where they promote coral growth by creating space for polyps to attach themselves and create coral colonies, where reefs have been destroyed by human activity, and can often lead to the beautiful rebirth of a new reef. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something about coral bleaching and what you can do to save our marine ecosystems.